So I've got my board here and I want to put down some of the Pebeo modelling paste, their studio modelling paste. I just want to have some textures and have some fun with it really. I really don't know what I'm going to do. It's going to be very abstract. I quite like the texture you get from putting it down with a palette knife. You get this sort of broken mark. And I've got this tool that's got various different teeth on it. Got some ideas of where I'm going to go with this. But who knows until I start playing. Now there are sand texture gels, but this is just a plain one, and I'm just going to use the plain one today. I don't want to include the sand texture in this particular piece. Quite fancy some smooth transitions, so scraping that out. This does dry very hard when it dries, so you can actually embed things in it if you want to, beads and other things. Like I say, I don't have any texture patterns particularly in mind, but I've got some ideas. So you can put these just by putting the palette knife down, you get a different texture. I want this quite random, I don't want to be too neat and even with it. Let's repeat some of that pattern over here. So I've got a little bit of texture at the edges, but this is fairly flat and calm. Most of my activity occurs through the middle here. Just going to see what else I can get out of this little pot. I've had this particular little pot quite a while, so it needs using up. There we go. Quite like these like ribbons coming through. And I think I now need to let that dry. So let's leave that to dry and then see where we go from there. Hi there, I've been working on my textured piece, this piece, which the texture paste has now dried on. So I'm going to continue. I'm going to use some black gesso over it, then I'm going to put some other things on it. So hopefully it'll all be quite interesting. So let's get going. Okay, so we're ready to start putting some gesso down. What I'm going to use is the black gesso from Pebeo in the centre section, and then as we come out, turn it the right way around, I'm going to use the white gesso, Universal Prime. So I'm just going to gesso the whole thing first, and to be honest, I'm not going to put a lot of paint over the top of the gesso because I just think it's going to work as is. I will put some, but not a lot. So I'm cleaning my brush, and I want to put the gesso, the black, through the middle section here. It covers so beautifully, this black gesso. Just scumbling to make sure I get it in amongst all of those textures. Just straight out of the pot. I'm only scumbling as much as I am because I want to make sure I get it in amongst all those texture layers. So I've got this diagonal stripe that goes across, not quite corner to corner. And I'm going to add a little bit of my white gesso to this. Here we go. Let me just show you. I'm just going to take a bit of this and put it into my pot. Don't need a lot. Just scrape it down. So what I want here, I've got my black gesso going across that diagonal. I've now added my white gesso down as well, and I'm going to fade this out a little bit along the sides. Now this black is really strong. It covers in one coat most of the time. So I'm just going to go side to side, and really I'm not doing much more than picking up the white on its own, but mixing it in with the black that's on my brush and also what is on the canvas already. Flipping from one side of the canvas to the other just to make sure that this sort of fades out reasonably evenly on both sides. Again, just picking up the white gesso and blending. I'll put far less texture at these edges. But I still want to make sure I've got everything covered. Fade that in. Back up to the other side. This does dry quite quickly, this gesso, but I'm still getting just enough time to do this blending, jumping from one side of the canvas to the other. What I'm doing is taking most of the paint off, so when it comes to the blending it's picking up a bit of each colour. I guess this is back to that old waiting game now, isn't it? I need to allow this to dry off and then come back and see if I need to make any adjustments. But I'm just having a good look. I've got everything covered, so I've got this nice dark area in the middle, lighter on both sides, and all my texture runs through the centre here. So see you in a little bit. This has dried off now. And just looking at those textures on there, and I've decided I want to put a little bit of colour into this. So I'm using these pebeo colours, and I'm making this light blue. I don't want a lot of colour, it's really not going to be very much, and in fact I think I'm going to apply it with this sponge. I'm going to try anyway. Hang on, let's just... So I just got a little bit of this colour on my sponge. Just drag that across. I think that's literally all the colour I want to put on. I'm going to put some foils on there later. But in terms of the colour, that's all I want to put in, so I need to take that down for a wash. And then the only thing left to do is I do want to put some foils on, and I want to put a mixture of using the gilding paste and the mixture relief. So I've got this pebeo gilding paste and the mixture. So this is thicker, this is more watery. So all I need is a brush that's going to fit in here. So there's going to be places where I want to put this mixture down, and this is going to dry and allow me to put the foils onto this. And then this just has to dry, and then once it's dried I'll come back with the foils. So I'm going to speed this bit up whilst I do this. Okay, so I've put some of that splatter and brush down. There's not a lot left in this one, so this is going to be interesting, but we'll see what happens. Now this is the hardest part of all of this, and that is the patience to let that dry enough. Now the thin stuff will be dry in 10-15 minutes, but the thicker stuff, this one, takes probably closer to an hour properly dry. So I'll probably come back tomorrow now and finish that off. Okay, so I've put a little bit more of my mixture on and that's dried, so I'm just going to put the last bit of mirror foiling on and then we're done. Same as before, I'm doing some in silver and some in gold, so I need to get the gold out. Put the gold away, I was being tidy. Quite like the combination of the gold, silver, the matte and the shiny. That's all quite nice. Slowly working my way up the picture. Okay, so the last bits have dried. I've put the last little bits of the mirror foil on and I think I'm done. I quite like the monochrome. I like the gesso coming back here and I'm just leaving that as gesso. We've got some fabulous textures which I hope you can see as I'm moving that around. And thank you for joining me. I've loved it. Really enjoyed doing that one. Thank you.